Hello, everyone, and welcome to my live tarot Q&A. Hello and welcome. I'll give everyone a moment to say hello in the chat and let me know where you're from. I'm super excited to be here answering your tarot questions. So this is I'm not going to be doing any tarot readings in this Q&A, but I'll be answering all your other tarot related questions. So I'm just going to take a minute to introduce myself for those of you who might be new, who might not know who I am. My name is Kate. I'm also known as the Daily Tarot Girl. I've been reading tarot for well over 10 years. I think it's probably maybe more like 12 or 13 years now. Or maybe even 15 actually. And I'm also a tarot teacher, and that is what I'm most passionate about, is teaching you how to read for yourself and read for others. So that's about me in a nutshell. And I see there's already lots of comments in the chat. All right, so welcome Nadia. Hello. Hello, Ailey. Hello, Kelston. Lois, hello. Laura, welcome. Sunena. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start this Q&A off by opening the floor for questions. So if you have any tarot-related questions for me, just post it in the chat. And before I get into the questions, I also want to kind of give myself a little bit of a plug here, promote my upcoming course. I've got a course that's going to be starting next week on Wednesday. It's called The Daily Tarot Girl's Guide to Reading Tarot for Others. And this focuses on teaching you how to get really good at and how to feel really confident giving other people tarot readings. When I first went from practicing on myself and giving myself readings to giving readings to other people, I was kind of shocked by how different it was and how different it felt giving someone else a tarot reading. And I struggled with feeling comfortable doing it and feeling confident for years and years. And I think the first 5 or 6 years doing professional readings, I would constantly doubt myself. I didn't feel that confident. And I've learned so much over the past, decade or so that I've been reading professionally. And so that's basically what I share in this course. So I'm going to put the link in the chat if anyone is interested in checking that out. I'm going to be shutting down registration on Tuesday, so in a couple days. And this might be, I'm not 100% sure, but this might be the last time I run this course. I don't know for sure. So if it's something that you're interested in, now's a good time to sign up. Okay, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the course as we, at the end of this Q&A too. And if anyone has any questions about it, feel free to ask. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first question up at the top. Okay, so Ailey, I think I'm saying that right. You said this is the second time attending a live. The last one was the last one I did last week. Is this live about tarot doubts answered, or are you doing readings? So yeah, I'm not going to be doing readings. This is any other tarot related question. So Lois says, please comment on numbers. For example, the 4s are typically stable. What about other numbers? Good question, Lois. So yeah, learning, having a sense of what the numbers mean in tarot can really help you learn the minor arcana cards. And so I won't go through every single number, but like the aces are usually about new beginnings. 2s can be, here's the thing. So let's take the number 2, for example. When we see the number 2 in the 2 of Swords, it's about making a choice, trying to maybe decide between 2 different things, maybe feeling kind of conflicted. When we see 2 of Wands, this is about pausing to contemplate your next move. So it's almost like a sense of space. If you think you have 1, 2 of Wands is about that space in between, and giving yourself that space and breathing room. When we see the 2 in the 2 of Pentacles, it's about balance, balancing 2 different things, juggling 2 different things. And then the two of did I do swords, wands, cups? Two of cups is about kind of two people coming together and um, sort of that, not alchemy, but like mixing the traits and the talents and the skills of those two people kind of coming together and sharing. So we get to see how the number two and the concept of two can be illustrated in all different ways. So a really good exercise to do is to get your tarot deck and separate it so you have all the, all the fours are in a little pile, all the fives, all the sixes, and compare and contrast. Look at all of the twos, look at all of the threes, and just notice how it's depicted in each suit. And you can learn a lot about the numbers that way. So I hope that answered your question, Lois. Yeah, and I mean, I could go on and on about the numbers. Tens are like the end of something coming to a head, something, finishing, something closing. Yeah, the numbers are really interesting to study. Okay. Lots of good questions. Okay, so the next question is again from Lois. Are you familiar with the Dreaming Way Tarot? Yes, I am familiar with the Dreaming Way Tarot. It's not a deck that I have. I have a friend who has that deck, so she's read for me a number of times with that tarot, and I think it's a lovely deck, but I don't own it myself, so I can't, I haven't seen the deck in its entirety, so I can't really comment much on it other than that, but it looks like a cool deck. Okay, hello, Conchi from Spain. Hello, Debbie. Ascenso, or Essence. Oh, Greg, hello from Honolulu. I love how everyone is from all over the world. Anna from Rio, hello, welcome. Okay, how do you read court cards in a reading? Okay, good question. Court cards are like every tarot reader's nemesis, especially if you're new to tarot. Court cards are tricky because, well, they're kind of like personality cards. So think of the court cards as representing sort of personality traits. They can, and I think this is why it's kind of tricky to read them, is because they could mean a whole variety of different things. So they could represent a person in your life. They could represent an individual. They could represent you. I find most of the time the court cards represent an aspect within ourselves. And depending on where the court card is placed or what you're asking about, usually the court card is telling you what kinds of personality traits to really tap into, to maximize for your benefit, or to be aware of. So it could be personality traits that are getting in your way. So I'll give you an example. And let me just pull out a court card here to show you. So this is from the Universal Weight Tarot deck. So let's say you get Queen of Cups in a reading. So here we've got Queen of Cups. So let's say you get Queen of Cups in a reading. And again, it would depend on what you're asking about, how you would interpret it. Let's say you're just asking a general question like, what do I need to know today? What do I need to focus on today? And you get Queen of Cups. So in this case, I would interpret it as personality traits that you already have that you want to really tap into and maximize. So Queen of Cups is, and this is what's helpful in learning the court cards, is think of the court cards as individuals with personalities. So the Queen of Cups, she's a queen. So she has a certain level of experience and know-how. She's confident, she's mature, she has skills, and because she's the Queen of Cups, and Cups is the realm of feelings, emotions, relationships, she's really good at working with her feelings and her emotions. She's good at communicating and navigating relationships. She's good at feeling her feelings. So I would say when the Queen of Cups comes up in a reading, it's to remind you to be open to your feelings. Don't shut them out. You want to work with your feelings and your emotions. She's also a really good listener. And she knows how to like hold a space for other people's emotions and feelings to come through. So she would make a really good counselor or coach, or a parent or friend, someone who's just really good at listening and being empathetic. But yeah, if you're struggling with court cards, focus on seeing them as individuals with personalities and really like flesh out the personality of each court card, and focus on what the gifts of each court card are, and then what the downside is, because every court card has a good side and a bad side. Not necessarily a bad side, but like personality traits that could get in the way. So Queen of Cups, if this was like blocking you in some way, it could be that you're too empathetic, you're too feelings focused, and that it's sort of getting in the way. Okay, so Sean asks, hello, why do readings change? And I want a little bit of clarification on this question before I dive into it, because I think you're meaning like if you read on one topic one day and then you read again on the next day, it's different from day to day. I think that's what you're asking, but just let me know, just clarify what you meant by that, and then I'll answer it. Sophia, you said, oh no, I love that course. I hope you keep running it, or something similar. Yeah, I've got lots of ideas for some like more smaller sized courses, like little Zoom workshops and stuff that I'm going to be rolling out this year. I'm just in the process of writing down my ideas for it. So I definitely have lots of things, lots of new ideas on the horizon. Yeah. Have you ever used Lenormand cards? Would you ever? So yes, I've actually been sent a couple of Lenormand decks for the purpose of doing a review of those cards. And so I have a couple of decks. I haven't learned how to read Lenormand yet. So what I understand, the main difference between tarot and Lenormand is a totally different system. And from what I understand is it's a lot more simple. So you don't really like explore the cards. Like I love to dive into a tarot reading and like really explore the cards. With Lenormand, it tends to be very straightforward and more blunt, and you can read about really specific things. And so I think that's why a lot of people like it. I haven't learned how to read it yet. I plan on eventually learning, but I don't know when. Yay, Liz, you signed up for my upcoming course. Awesome. Good. Yeah, I'm excited about my course. Yeah, it's starting Wednesday, and I'm just gearing up for it. And I always get excited right before one of my courses starts. Okay. Okay, 2 questions from Sanena. Difference between the 5 of Cups and the 8 of Cups, and the difference between the 8 of Wands and the Knight of Swords. So the difference between those, well, they're totally different cards. So they have totally different meanings. The main difference between the 5 of Cups and the 8 of Cups would be 8 of Cups is usually about walking away from something or abandoning something, going off in search of deeper meaning. 5 of Cups is about feeling disappointed in something didn't go well, you're kind of dwelling on what didn't work out. Difference between 8 of Wands and Knight of Swords, I mean, those are completely those are 2 very different cards. 8 of Wands usually has to do with things unfolding quickly and speed, and Knight of Swords, also actually a speedy card. So I can see why you're wanting to know the difference, because they do have a little bit in common. Knight of Swords, it's also about like being kind of intense. Knight of Swords is a very intense court card about charging towards your goals, but I feel like the Knight of Swords is more about like taking action, whereas the 8 of Swords is more about, you take action on something, or you send out a letter, you have a conversation with something, and then the ball is rolling on its own. Something kind of starts moving on its own steam without you having to do much. It's like you take one little action and then things kind of unfold from there. If you're doing a past, present, and future spread, and the cards are very different from each other, do you read them as a single card and the story progresses, or find some connection through the symbols? Okay. What I tend to do when I'm reading is I like to begin by reading each card kind of individually. But in the case of a 3-card reading, I would start with the first card, I would move on to the second card, and I would probably read all 3 cards kind of individually. And then I might, step back and look for connections. And you can look for, sometimes the connections are obvious. Maybe there's a symbol that gets repeated. Maybe the vibe of the cards are similar. But you don't necessarily have to look for similarities in order to connect the cards. So one way of connecting the cards is each time you turn over a card, it's kind of like you're making a stew, and with each added ingredient, that changes the flavor of the stew a little bit. Or you're making a potion. Each time you add something to that potion, it changes it a little bit. And so what you can do is, if you're doing a 3-card spread, when you turn over the second card, you can ask, okay, how does the presence of this card change the flavor? How does it change the vibe? How does it interact with the first card? How do these 2 cards interact together? Do they talk to each other? Like if you get, for example, let's say you get strength as card number 1, you get Ace of Wands as card number 2, how does the presence of the Ace of Wands affect strength? As opposed to, let's say you get a card like 5 of Cups. These 2 cards together, I would read them differently than, Ace of Wands and strength. I hope that made sense. I hope that gave you some ideas. And in the case of like a past, present, future spread, already you have kind of the template of a story. If you're wanting to tell a story with the cards, it's like the chapter of the past is, one chapter, the present is the chapter that's unfolding now, and then the future is the next chapter. So you have kind of like a linear timeline already with that kind of a reading. Do you use elements in your readings? If the meanings of the cards and the reading of elements clash, who wins? Okay, so the elements, there's the 4 elements, and the 4 elements are earth, air, water, fire, and they're represented by the 4 suits. So earth is pentacles or coins, cups, or water is cups, air is swords, and fire is wands. And this, just having this understanding that this is what each suit represents, helps you understand the nature of the suits better. So yeah, I'm always considering the elements when I'm doing readings, for sure. If the meanings of the cards and the reading of the elements clash, who wins? I feel like I wanted a specific example, Anna, of what you mean by that. An instance where a particular card or an element clashes. I can't really think of an example. And it's not necessarily like which one wins. Is it the element or is it the card? When I read tarot, I'd like to take into consideration the elements. I take into consideration the card I'm reading, the symbols on the card, the numbers, surrounding cards. I kind of take it all in, and then I just kind of pick and choose, I guess on kind of an intuitive level, what things I'm going to emphasize. And so it's not really a battle of like the traditional meaning and the element. It's more just kind of taking all that stuff in to form a big picture, if that makes sense. If we do reversals, but it lands, okay, if we read reversals, but it lands sideways, how will you decide if it is reversed or upright? Okay, so when I'm reading tarot, I lay the cards out a specific way. So I would never, I get what you're saying. If it lands sideways, like in the Celtic cross spread, there's that, I think the second card is like crossed over the first card. I would just always read it upright. That's what I would do. If you can't decide if it's reversed or upright, just go with upright. Hello, Liz Queen from Switzerland. And Joss Devon in Netherlands. Hello. Crafty Girl from USA, New Jersey. Renee from Michigan. David from Florida. And Uruguay. Awesome. This is an international crowd. I love it. Okay. Some readers do readings where the client doesn't say what they're asking about, but they answer anyway. How do they do it when they're not psychic? Okay, so I think you're referring to a reading where the client doesn't really give you any information or even questions, and you're just doing kind of a general reading. I think that's what you're referring to. So how do you do that if you're not psychic? So this is actually one of my favorite kinds of readings to do. A reading where, I mean, personally, I always like a little bit of information from someone. I never really need a lot of background info when I'm reading for someone, but I like to know kind of why they're getting the reading or why they want a reading in the first place. But I have done lots of sort of general readings where there's no questions and I don't really know much about the person. And in that case, I entirely rely on the cards in front of me and wherever my intuition takes me. And sometimes my intuition will be speaking really loudly and I'll get all kinds of ideas and phrases and visions coming into my head as I'm reading for them. And sometimes my intuition is a little more quiet and it takes more of a back seat. And then I'm relying more on just the cards and my knowledge of the tarot. But you don't, to give someone a reading, you don't need to know anything about them and you don't need to have specific questions. The cards speak for themselves. I think it can kind of be a little bit tricky, I think, for some people because a question is like it allows you to focus. It allows you to interpret the cards through that lens of the question. And without a question, you don't have a particular focus or lens to describe the cards. So you're just kind of going rogue and you're really relying more on your intuition when it comes to, okay, what am I going to say about this card? What am I going to emphasize? What am I going to focus on? So in some ways it can be a little bit trickier, but I love doing readings like that. And you don't have to be psychic necessarily to do those kinds of readings. What is your view on clients and their questions? Do you read without them asking, or do you ask them to tell you the situation and then work from there? So I always ask people, do you have any questions? So I let them choose if they're going to ask me questions or not ask me questions. And I don't ask for a ton of background info. Some people, I don't actually ask for any background info when I read for someone. Some people like to volunteer that information. Other people don't. Yeah, so I just go with whatever the person I'm reading for is comfortable with. Oh, okay, this is a good one. Can you comment about how to read a bad card like the Ten of Swords or Death Reversed when the client has a question about their kids or spouse? Okay. So I don't think that there's any bad cards necessarily. So the tarot cards are, I see tarot cards as being almost like little portals, little doorways into a particular world. And that world might be a particular feeling or an emotion. So with your example of the Ten of Swords, if you look at the Ten of Swords, this is a card of feeling like you're in pain, feeling like you want to give up, feeling bogged down or betrayed, being kind of at the end of your rope. And the cards are like little windows into these human experiences that we have. And every card, no matter if it's a really, really great card like the Sun or the Ace of Cups, or a bad card like the Ten of Swords or Death, they all have a positive side and a negative side. And so in that way, in some ways, they're kind of neutral. So you can look at them in a positive light or look at them in a negative light. So with the Ten of Swords, clearly this is a more negative leaning card. It's about feeling maybe betrayed or feeling like you just want to give up. And if you can look at it on the bright side though, it could show that you are this is a culmination of something. This is you've hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. And if you look at the Rider Waite version of that card, and I don't want to waste time looking for it through my deck because it will probably take me forever. Oh, here it is. The sun is rising in the background of this card, which I think is interesting. Probably can't really see it on my webcam. But the sun is rising, and this card is also depicts a need for healing. And so I think if you focus, when you're reading the cards, if you focus on reading the card in a way that's helpful and useful for someone, that changes how you see the cards. So when 10 of Swords comes up in a reading, it's usually saying that the person I'm reading for needs to heal from something. There's some kind of wound that they're needing to heal from. And that in and of itself isn't negative. That's not bad, right? We all have issues and wounds that we need to heal from. But it's coming up in the reading because they need to pay attention to that right now. So that is how to answer your question. How do you read like the bad cards, especially when a client is asking about kids or spouse? Usually I don't like when people ask about specific people. I'll read for them about like a relationship. Like if they say, how can I support my son in this, or, how can I improve my relationship with my spouse? But I don't really go into questions when people ask like specific questions about other people, because I find it, some readers don't do third-party readings because they feel like it's unethical. I feel like it's just difficult. It's like, I'm reading for you. I'm not reading for those other people. So I like to focus my readings on the person I'm reading for. And so I might focus on how they could be supportive to those people, how they can improve their relationships. But I won't spend a lot of time or any time going into like specifics of other people. But that's just me as a reader. There's other readers that feel totally different about that, and that's fine. Yeah, that's a good question, David. I don't know if I answered it for you in a succinct way, but think when you get a difficult card, it's like, think about, what's the card trying to say to that person? Because the cards aren't going to give you unhelpful information. They only want to help. They want to give you helpful stuff. So I'll give you a few more examples here. Death. Death is letting you know that there's something that needs to be released. There's something that is coming to an end or has come to an end, and it's time to close the door so that you can make room for something new. We've got the Devil. The Devil only comes up when you're longing for more freedom in some way, and it's time to look at the things that limit your freedom. So it could be addictions, it could be destructive patterns and cycles, it could be beliefs, giving your power away to something else. We have the Tower. This is another classic negative card. The Tower is saying, hey, the foundations are being shaken, and the things that you may have always relied on as being a sure thing are no longer a sure thing. But that, kind of similar to death, it's just making room to build something else. It's room to grow. Yeah. With a 3-card spread, do you typically put out one card at a time? Like for my weekly reading, what's your reactions to revealing all 3 cards at once? Yeah. So some readers like to turn over all the cards at once, so that they see the big picture right away. And I don't do that because I am one of these people who gets easily overwhelmed. So the thought of like looking at a full spread right away of all the cards turned over is just, it's a lot for me. So I like to read them one at a time. That's just my process that I'm comfortable with. But there's no rule that you have to do it that way. You can experiment with turning over all the cards at once and reading them that way if you like, and see see what happens, see how you like it. Oh, I like this question. What to do if I am doing a reading for someone and I don't know what to say? Like I'm not seeing anything and nothing makes sense. So this happens to me sometimes where you just draw a blank. You turn over a card and maybe the card doesn't make sense or it does make sense, but you just can't really think of anything interesting to say about it. So there's a few things that you can do here. This is an indication for me that I just need to take a breath. I need to take a moment and I need to pause. Now, if you're reading for, like I do most of my readings distance. So people send me their questions via email and then I record myself doing the reading. So that actually gives me a lot of freedom. So if I'm doing a reading and a card doesn't make sense, I can actually just pause my recording and just take a deep breath and sit with it for a moment and until I think of something and then start my recording. But if you're reading for someone live and they're sitting across from you, you don't really have that luxury. But don't feel like you have to keep talking as a reader. I would often fall into this trap where I would think, because I'm doing the reading, I have to keep verbalizing and babbling away the whole time I'm reading. And it's okay to pause and and what I would do in this situation, if I'm doing a live reading for someone and I turn over a card and I just draw a blank, I will say, I'm just gonna sit with this card for a minute so I can really hear what it's trying to tell me. And and then I'll just get quiet. And then usually something will pop into my head. If it doesn't, what I would say is, I don't know what this card means yet, so I'm going to leave it and I'm going to move on, and then we're going to come back to that card. And that actually gives your brain some time to work on that, to contemplate that card while you read the other cards, and then you can come back to that card. So that's my advice for that. Another thing you can do, if you're really not getting anything from a card and you don't know how it fits in, show your client that card and say, what's your thought on this card? Are you drawn to a particular part of this card? Is there a symbol that stands out to you? And depending on what they say, you can take that as an indication of what to focus on in that card. How much talking should I do during a reading? I feel like I should be doing all the talking, but sometimes I hit a gap. Yeah, okay. So this is funny. You asked this right after, just as I said that. Um, Sometimes I hit a gap. I've heard other readers take talking quite a bit. Yeah, it's okay to hit a gap. What happens to me though when I'm reading for someone and they're sitting across from me, I get kind of nervous when I hit a gap. And it's hard for me to truly like focus when I know the other person's sitting there waiting for what I'm going to say. I get like performance anxiety, which I think is part of the reason I love doing readings that are recorded, because I that takes that that out of it. But yeah, so how much talking should you be doing? This just depends on you as a reader. Some readers are more talkative and chatty than others. I like to, if I'm reading for someone in person, I like to ask them a few questions like, out of all the cards here, which one are you most drawn to? And I'll kind of let them open up and share things. I like kind of interacting in my readings when I'm doing a live reading, just because I don't get to do that when I'm doing my recorded reading. So, yeah. Do you think all these love readers are too idealistic? I don't know. I don't know what a love reader is. I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you want to clarify, I'll answer that question. Um, I think most of us, when it comes to love, are very idealistic, though, in general, for sure. Do you offer your clients a choice of decks or do you choose based on their questions? So usually what I do is I just have a deck that I am really comfortable working with, and I like to choose the deck. Unless someone else requests a specific deck be used, I'm totally fine with that too. I don't ask people to choose because in the past I've done that and I find people get stressed out about it and they're like, I don't know, like what decks do you have? And I just realized that people get more stressed out about that. So I choose the deck unless someone else requests a specific deck. And I tend to just choose the deck that I'm most comfortable working with at that time. I go through phases where I will always want to work with one deck when I'm reading for others. So right now, I like using the Light Seers. Before that, I was using the Wandering Star Tarot. And before that, I think it was the Light Seers. And before that, it was Everyday Witch Tarot. Before that, it might have been Rider Waite. I don't know. But I usually have like my go-to deck that I use for reading for others. And then sometimes I'll go to do a reading for someone with that deck and it just won't feel right. I'm like, this isn't the right deck. I need to pick a different deck for this person. And then I'll go to my shelf and I'll look at my cards and I'll go with the one that I feel drawn to. Okay, how do you read the cards? I mean, you have the card meanings, then elements, and after that, the numbers, and then planets. Okay, I don't even think about the planets. How do you learn to pick and choose what to learn and what not to? So this is the thing with tarot is it intersects with a lot of other things. So numerology can, you can learn a lot about numerology that will enhance your understanding of tarot. You can learn about astrology that will enhance your understanding of the tarot. I think the Kabbalah also, there's some crossover there. There's uh, yeah, there's so many different learning about the elements. There's so many things that play into tarot, and the downside is it can make tarot seem more complex and more overwhelming than it really needs to be. So, how do you learn, what to go with when you're reading the cards? The biggest mistake you can make, I think, is trying to incorporate all of that stuff when you're reading a card. So, for the star, for example, I could focus on the number on this card. I could focus on the color. I could focus on the name of it. I could focus on the astrological associations, which I don't think I actually know. So, or I could focus on symbols. I prefer to focus on visual elements because that's just what tends to speak to my intuition more. So I'll focus on the colors and the symbols in a card. And I like to use the card as like a doorway. I like to think of myself kind of like entering the card and interacting with some of the symbols and characters in that card to get an understanding of what it's trying to tell me. So that's kind of how I approach reading tarot. For me, the more simple my approach is, the more it works for me. I like a simple approach. Everyone's different though. Like some readers love to learn about all that other stuff and incorporate that into their readings. I feel like it's just overwhelming. So I like to just really focus on symbolism more than anything. Hello, Maria from Spain. Iris, you said you're an Italian living in Belgium. Yeah, we have people from all over the world today. I love it. Oh, okay. So Anna, I know you asked about using the elements earlier, and I said I wasn't quite sure what you meant when you said, I think you said if a card meaning clashes with the element, which one wins out? So you said an example of what I mean with elements would be, I should have used dignities as well. Water and fire weaken each other. How would then the Two of Cups and Ace of Wands in a relationship weaken each other? Okay. You know what? I wouldn't even worry about that. The only way and I see what you're saying here, like, fire and water, how do those mix? I would only really think about that if I was doing a reading that had like an overabundance of a particular suit, like a ton of wands, like that's a really fiery reading. And maybe in that reading, there's like one water card or one air card or something like that. And then I might emphasize kind of the fiery nature of that reading and But otherwise, I really wouldn't worry about it. I would go more with the card meanings than worrying about the elements. That's just me. I see some readers read the bottom card from the deck. What does that card really mean? I don't find any books that talk about it so far. That makes me curious about that card and how should I use it in a reading. Okay. So I don't do this myself, but I have heard of other readers doing it. And I think the idea is that the bottom card, these are the last couple cards I talked about. The bottom card symbolizes the uh, like a hidden influence or something kind of subconscious that you need to be aware of. I think that's the thinking behind it. Yeah, so I think it's kind of cool reading the bottom card. Yeah, but it's not something I do. I just got a deck in the mail to do a review of, which I haven't. I'm going to do an unboxing video of this deck. I used it in my weekly reading. It's called the Elemental Wisdom Tarot, and it's by the same people that created the Dark Mansion Tarot, but I think it's a different artist. But it's really cool. I'll just show you some of the cards. I'm going to be doing my unboxing video pretty soon, but there's lots of mermaids on it. It's a really pretty deck. Yeah, I'm excited to work with it. Okay. Is it a good idea to interject one of your own short true life stories to provide an analogy or clarify a point? I do this all the time, and sometimes I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe people don't want to hear me talk about myself in their reading, but sometimes I can't help it, and it just it does illustrate a point really well. So I think that that consider how well does this story illustrate the point I'm trying to make. I think sometimes using an example and your own life story can be helpful, but you can definitely do it too much. So I really wouldn't do it. I try not to do it more than once in a reading and not to necessarily do it with every reading. I don't think it's bad to interject a true life story to provide an example, but you just want to make sure you don't do it too much. Oops. Okay, Cherie, I think you've asked for a reading. I'm not going to be doing readings in this live. I'm just answering tarot-related questions, but I will be doing another reading party, hopefully not too long. I want to do more lives on my channel. I don't do enough of them, and I really enjoy doing them, so my goal is to do more regular live events. How do you give practical readings when they don't give you any information? For example, my client about their door getting fixed. How do you read for them when they didn't tell you anything? Okay, so how do you give a practical reading if you don't have any information? You don't need, and again, I think someone asked kind of a similar question. You don't need specific information from the person you're reading for to give practical advice. Sometimes I think it helps to have a sense of why they want the reading or what they're hoping to get from the reading. Even if they just say, I just am doing this for fun, for entertainment, or I just want some new ideas, even if it's a vague general thing like that, it kind of helps to get a sense of where they're at, where they're coming from for this reading. I think that you can still give pretty practical readings and practical specific advice with the cards, even if you don't have any information on them. How do you do that? Okay, practice pulling a card and thinking of 2 or 3 practical advice points of that card. So I drew the Empress. This is from the Elemental Wisdom Tarot. So 3 practical things the Empress might tell us. I feel like the Empress is, she's telling you to chill out, relax more, and focus on being more receptive. So this might be opening up more to new ideas, receiving guidance, being in a receptive state as opposed to an active, focused state. Another piece of advice she gives us, the Empress is very earthy, and I feel like she's telling you to get into your body. Focus on pleasure more than anything. Focus on engaging your senses, having a full sensory experience of whatever you're doing, like really slowing down. Another practical tip that the Empress can give is let things unfold on their own. You need to get out of the way sometimes. You don't always have to be micromanaging everything. Sometimes it's helpful to just be a nurturing force instead of an active force, being there to hold a space and nurture. Nurturing the things that you want to grow. The Empress is a master gardener. How can you nurture? Decide what it is you're wanting more of in your life, what you're wanting to grow. How can you nurture that? So those are just a few ideas. And I know this card really, really well. So this is about getting to know your cards really well, getting really acquainted with them, understanding what they're all about. And I think that you won't have any trouble giving helpful advice, even if you don't have questions. How can you tell time with the cards? Some readers say in 3 months, this and this will be possible, or in 4 weeks. Yeah, predicting events and timing with tarot is not easy. I don't really do it that much unless I have a strong intuition about something, because I find I don't even know if it's really possible. I mean, there's there's different ways you could do it. I mean, you could look at the numbers in the card. Some people will look at like what season is on the card. So if someone says, when will this and that happen? And let's say you get a lot of cards where it looks like spring, maybe that's an indication that in the spring this is going to be more possible to happen. I don't do a lot of that because I find timing with the tarot is kind of tricky. And I feel like the cards, when people ask about timing, like when is this going to happen or when is that going to happen, the cards are really good at telling you what you need to do between now and that thing happening in order to kind of speed up the process. But I don't find the cards to be that effective at predicting a specific timeline, if that makes sense. Okay, so Trinity and the Staple asked me if I think love readers are too idealistic. And I said, I don't know what you mean by that question. So you said tarot readers that only do readings that are 100% positive about love situations. Do I find that to be idealistic? Yeah, I think any reading that's 100% positive about everything is probably kind of idealistic. And especially love situations, because love situations are tricky and can be challenging. So I don't actually watch other tarot channels. I don't watch other readers on YouTube. So I haven't come across love readers who are idealistic. But yeah, everyone has a different reading style, and I think some readers like to just really focus on the positive, and that's fine. But the tarot cards are both positive and negative, and everything in between. How do you determine if the card is telling you to do something or not to do something? So Judy, this would depend on what kind of a spread you're using, where that card is in the spread, and what kind of a question that you're asking. So if you want to give me, if you're referring to a specific reading you did for yourself, if you want to give me more info, then that's fine. But how do you determine if it's telling you to do something or not do something? Yeah, let's say you're doing a reading and a card, one of the positions is what's blocking me. then you would read that card in the light of, this is something I should not be doing or something I should be aware of. So I think your question, how I answer your question, depends on where that card falls in a spread. If you're using a spread, what kinds of questions you've asked surrounding cards. It depends on a lot of other factors. Can you recommend an oracle card that's good for daily guidance? I think most oracle decks are pretty good for that. Most oracle decks tend to be kind of general and uplifting. So I feel like there's a lot of decks that would be good. I do like the Goddess Guidance Oracle cards. I think it's a Doreen Virtue deck. I don't know if it's available anymore. I do like that deck for daily guidance. I wish I was upstairs by my desk. I'm down in my foster cat room right now. But if I was upstairs, I could look at my shelf with all my decks and I could recommend some decks. I do like that goddess deck. There's just so many oracle decks. I feel like you want to go with a deck that has beautiful artwork, that you enjoy the imagery. Luckily, you can look at most decks online and see all the cards, so it's easy to choose. I like animal decks. I have quite a few different animal decks. Again, I wish I was upstairs because I could say the exact names of those decks. But if you look at my channel, I use a lot of different decks in my readings there. Okay, Kathy asks, sometimes I feel like the tarot cards are answering the question for me instead of the person I'm reading for. Oh, I see. Okay. So you feel like the tarot cards are speaking more to you in your life as opposed to the person you're giving the reading for. Is this normal? What am I doing wrong? So this is normal. And I have heard this said many times before, that when you give someone a reading, you're also kind of giving yourself a reading, that the cards that come up in the reading are definitely meant for the person you're reading for, but in some weird way, they're also kind of meant for you. And I think this is so true, because when I'm giving readings to people, oftentimes I'll be saying something and I'm thinking to myself, this is advice that I need to take too. Like this is something I'm also struggling with, or this is something I needed to hear. So I think that's totally normal. And especially, if you're worried though about your own stuff and your own issues clouding a reading and getting in the way and influencing a reading too much, make sure that you clear yourself and kind of center and ground yourself before you do a reading, and really set the intention to connect with the person you're reading for. And that will help you. Like I always like to sage myself, or I'll burn Palo Santo and I'll waft it over my body. And as I'm doing that, as I'm wafting the smoke around, I imagine whatever crap I've got going on, I just imagine the smoke kind of disintegrating it so that I'm clean and pure for this reading, so that I can just start with a blank slate and focus on the reading and not my own stuff. And then there's other things you can do. There's grounding meditations, there's centering meditations that you can do before the reading that can help with that. Oh yeah, Sophia says the Everyday Witch Oracle is a good one. Yeah, I don't have that one yet, but I've heard good things about it. Spirit Animal Oracle is another nice one. I've seen that one. That one's really beautiful. It's by Colette Baron Reed, I think. What do you see as the connection between the devil and the lovers? Oh, this is so interesting. Okay, let me pull out these two cards. So I'm going to go back to my Universal Weight Tarot deck here to get the devil and lovers, because the devil and the lovers are, I think, the same couple of people. Oh no, they look different actually, but they're a man and a woman. So we've got the lovers here, and then here we have the devil. So the main difference is their hair looks a bit different. But these two cards are similar if you compare them. We have the angel presiding over things with the lovers, and then we have the devil presiding over things in the devil. So what is I just have to reread the questions again. What's the connection between these two cards? I feel like I could do a whole video on this. I feel like this is something I need to like research and and yeah, this is something I feel like I need to think about more before I fully answer it. But the lovers comes first. If we're going through the major arcana numerically, the lovers comes first, the devil is later. And to me, it's kind of like the lovers, you meet someone, there's this intense connection, it's exciting. The devil is kind of the downside of a relationship when you start to maybe feel codependent or stuck in that relationship. Could be kind of the downside of that. Um, I also feel like the lovers, there's an innocence to this one, and it's kind of like discovering something for the first time, discovering something pleasurable that lights you up, that makes you come alive. The devil is when you become addicted to that thing. And relationships can be like that too. Relationships could be addictive. So there's an innocence to the lovers, a discovery, a wholesomeness, a purity. And then with the devil, it's like that thing gets turned on its head, it gets inverted. Okay, I hope that kind of answered your question. Okay, this is a good one. I don't like doing certain readings. For example, who is my spirit guide? Will my ex come back to me, etc.? How do you handle it? Do you just go with it and do the best, or tell them that you just can't do it? So I'm honest with myself. If it's a reading that I feel like, or if it's a question that I feel like, well, I can't answer that. Like someone that I read for recently wanted me to they asked all these questions about a relative who had passed, and they wanted to know all these questions. And so I said, you know what? I can't really answer that. Like, I'm not a medium. That's not my specialty. Connecting with other people on the other side and relaying messages. That's not really something that I'm gifted at. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And I let them know that. I said, maybe something will come up in the reading, but I can't promise that, and that's really not my expertise. And so I said, let me know other questions that you might have, because I don't think I can really explore this one. So I'm just on if it's a question I know that I can't answer, like I've had questions like people want to know names of their spirit guide and things like that. And I'm just not, I don't know. I'm not good at that kind of stuff. Certainly not in a consistent way. So I just let people know, like, I don't think I can do this for you. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe I could just give it a try and see what happens. And I'll just be honest with them about, the limits of my abilities. But in questions that you just don't want to answer, like you said, you hate questions like, will my ex come back to me? See those questions as it's an indication of where someone is at and what is on their mind right now. So if someone asks, will my ex come back to me? You know that they're hurting, they're still thinking about their ex. This is something that they're still invested in. So you could then do a reading for that person on their kind of relationship, their not necessarily their relationship with their ex, but their their connection to relationships in general, and ask the cards, what does this person need to see or understand about themselves in relation to romantic relationships? What's going to be helpful for them? What kind of advice can I give? And you could keep it kind of general and just see what kind of cards come up. And that means that you might not answer their question for them, but you may also give them a lot of helpful like insights and ideas of things that they can take away from the reading, which will probably be more helpful than giving them a yes no answer to their question about their ex. And I would preface the reading, if someone asked me a specific question like, will my ex come back to me, I would say, let's explore this topic. Let's explore this topic of relationship and relating. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that question for you because I'm not good at predicting other people's behavior or future decisions. So I'm not confident I'm going to be able to give you a clear answer on that one specific question, but I'd love to explore that topic and see what comes up. And most people are going to be open to doing that. I think most people don't really expect a specific answer, but I always preface the reading by saying that first so that they're not disappointed. What's your take on yes, no questions and tarot? Do you answer them or try to help the person receive more general advice? Yeah, so again, yes, no questions. Yes, no questions are what I call close ended questions. So there's not a lot of room for exploration. So, what I used to do when someone asked me a yes, no question, I would say, okay, let's rephrase that. So it's a more of an open ended question. So we can really use the cards to dive into this topic rather than just do a yes, no. Some readers like to do yes no spreads. They like yes no questions. That's fine. I hate them. I don't find them helpful. Um, but what I do now is any question someone asks me, I just see that question as an indication of what's on their mind and what's at the forefront of their life right now and what they would like the reading to focus on. I don't put pressure on myself to give them a yes or no answer. And I will usually say to them, I might not be able to give you a clear yes or no answer, but I can give you a lot of other information that you'll find helpful. If someone says, should I go back to school? Yes or no? I'll be like, okay, great. Let's explore this topic. And I might design a spread. I'll pull a few cards. But in my head, I'm not asking the cards, should they or shouldn't they go back to school? I'm asking the cards, what can you tell me about this person going back to school? Are crystals and stones a must for readings? Good question. I'm glad you asked it because I brought some of my crystals here that I want to kind of do a little show and tell. So you don't need crystals or stones for doing readings at all. I like to incorporate them. I love having a few crystals on my reading table. For me, I feel like the crystals they're really pretty. They help set the mood and the atmosphere for me for doing a reading, which helps me kind of get into my reader space and my mindset. I feel like the stones are just supportive. It's like having a guide or a friend in the room. And I just feel their supportive energy and their beauty. And so I like to have crystals on my reading table. But for many years, I didn't really use them. So you don't need crystals or anything, but I like to have them. I have a few here that I want to show you. I've got clear quartz, which I usually have on my work desk. This is kind of an interesting natural chunk of clear quartz. And quartz is a good kind of all-purpose stone. It's good for clearing energy. It's good. You can program quartz to I might program it to support me with staying centered and clear-minded while I'm giving a reading, or I might ask for support and connecting to my intuition. I also really like black tourmaline. This used to be a really big chunk, and then my cat knocked it off my bookshelf and it busted. But black tourmaline is a really good grounding stone, and it's just it just feels like like a weighted blanket. Like it's just very, very grounding. It's a very protective stone. And I often, if I'm reading for someone who I feel is very ungrounded and kind of flighty and scattered, then I'll put this on my reading table. And my favorite piece, this is a piece I recently bought in a crystal shop. This is a giant chunk of amethyst. And amethyst helps amethyst helps with connecting to your intuition. It helps with connecting to the spirit realms. And it's just a beautiful mystical stone. It's also very calming. It has a calming energy. And so if you're feeling nervous or excited about doing the reading, it's nice to have a chunk of amethyst there to sort of hold the space. Do you have any advice for using tarot to help with creative writing? I've used them for character development and it was brilliant, but I can't find a good way to use for plot. Oh, yes, I've used tarot with creative writing as well. The way I think I used it is I was like, okay, what's going to be the theme of the first chapter? And then I would like draw a card. Like, how's the story going to develop from there? Where is it going to go? And I draw another card. Um, so I did it like that. I saw the cards as like key points on an adventure. And of course, the cards, especially the majors, represent these sort of archetypal challenges and archetypal energies and issues. And so they're very handy with helping you with plot points and plot development. So if you're writing a story and you're like, I don't know where it's going to go next, ask, where can I take this story next? And then draw a couple cards and see what happens. That's how I've used it for plot. What do you think is a good tarot deck to read to teenagers, age 14 and up, boys and girls? Um, uh, Everyday Witch Tarot. Modern Witch Tarot is a good one. I feel like Modern Witch is kind of like youthful in a way. It's kind of modern. Modern Witch Tarot I might use. Lightseers, really beautiful. I think that would be good for teens. Yeah. Okay, so Music 1AC. Hey. I have to go, but I hope you choose my question. You started to put a disclaimer in your YouTube videos. Did something happen that made you want to start preparing for someone to sue you? Laugh out loud. I'm curious what happened because you didn't used to give a disclaimer before. Yeah, so I started putting a disclaimer in my reading videos. And this is embarrassing. The only reason I did it is because all the other readers on YouTube were doing it. So nothing happened. It's nothing like that. I just noticed, oh, everyone else is doing this disclaimer thing. Maybe I should do it. And my disclaimers just said something like, these readings are for entertainment purposes only. Never use readings to make important life decisions or legal, medical, financial. This doesn't take the place of professional, legal, financial, medical advice, something like that. You can go to my YouTube channel. I think there's actually I might have put a disclaimer in the description for this thing too. And I just did it because everyone else was doing it, which, I don't know if that's a good reason or not, but yeah. All right, so I've got a few more questions that I want to get to. But before I do that, I want to give myself a little bit of a plug. I want to promote my upcoming course. So I have a 4-week course coming up. Classes start next week on Wednesday, but I'm going to be closing down registration in a couple of days, so on Tuesday. So the name of the course is The Daily Tarot Girl's Guide to Reading Tarot for Others. So this course focuses on teaching you how to give readings to others. It's a really fun course. It's 4 weeks. So each week you get 4 to 5 new video lessons with accompanying worksheets and exercises. There's a private Facebook group just for students of this course. And I do weekly challenges and weekly Q&As, very similar to this one, actually. So every week I do a video like this for Q&As where I can answer your questions and interact. And I, of course, record every Q&A. So if you can't be at that Q&A live, you can always watch the recording or send me your questions ahead of time. So that course starts on Wednesday. It runs for 4 weeks. Cost is $197 US. There is a payment plan available as well. So it is super affordable. And I'm really excited to be running this class. It's open level, so beginners are welcome to take it. It's not a beginner class in the sense that I don't walk you through each tarot meaning. It's not that kind of a course, but I focus on teaching you how to connect the cards in a reading, how to tell a story, how to create spreads, how to deal with like difficult questions, difficult clients, how to feel confident, how to really ground your energy. Yeah, and there's going to be lots of opportunities to practice your tarot reading skills in that class. So, oh, I'm babbling about it, and I should share my link to that class if you want to check it out. If you end up watching the replay of this video, the link will be in the chat as well as just below this video. Okay, so the link is in the chat. I'll be closing down registration pretty soon on Tuesday, and this might be the last time I offer this course. So if you're on the fence, you're thinking I'll just take it next year, I might not offer it next year. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I hope to see you guys there. Okay, so there's a few more questions here. And of course, if anyone has questions about my course, feel free to ask me here or email me later. I'm more than happy to answer. All right. Do you find at times that you need to shuffle the cards, cut them, and read them as opposed to shuffling and drawing cards by feel? Or is it just me, or do you always shuffle and draw the same for each deck? Okay, so I think you're asking me, yeah, do you always do it the same, or how do you choose your cards? So I like to shuffle my cards, and it's funny because sometimes I'll sit down to do a reading for someone and I'll shuffle and then I'm like, I need to shuffle again. And I'll shuffle for sometimes like 5 minutes straight. And then I'm like, okay, I've shuffled the deck enough. And there's different ways that I'll choose a card. So after I shuffle the deck, I might choose a card just by going like this and just seeing where the deck cuts. And then I'll take that top deck or top card. Sometimes I'll just hold the deck like this and just kind of let it naturally split and then take the top card. Other times I do something where I go like this and then take that card that comes up. Sometimes I'll fan the cards out on a table and then just look and pick the cards that I'm drawn to. Yeah, so I have different methods depending on what kind of a mood I'm in. Okay. Okay, I'm just scrolling up to see what questions I haven't answered. Where do you think the answers come from in tarot? Do you think there's an entity choosing the cards or sending you messages? What's your view on this? I don't think there's any entities involved choosing the cards and sending you messages. Where do the answers come from? This is an interesting question. I don't really know. I mean, when I do a reading, I feel like the answers come from a combination of the cards and sort of my own intuition. Yeah, this is a good question. I don't know the answer to it, where the answers come from. They come from the mystery of the universe, I guess. And someone kind of answered it here. I think answers from tarot can come from a combination of the reader's unique insight from their experiences combined with the artwork on the cards. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. David, you said, I guess my question sucked. David, I don't think I saw what your question was. So I'm sorry. If anyone asked a question I didn't answer it, it's not because I thought it sucked. It's probably because I didn't see it, because there's a lot of questions and it's easy to miss one. So I'll just scroll up and see, David, what your question was. And I don't see your question, David. So, oh, here it is. The tarot reader near my house told me there's a curse on me and I could pay her to remove the curse. What do you think? Yeah, I think I wouldn't pay her to remove the curse. I think I maybe wouldn't hang out with this this tarot reader. So I've heard people ask me this question. I've heard this a couple times actually, where someone said I went to get a reading, and the tarot reader told me that I someone put a curse on me, and for extra money I could pay them to remove the curse. To me, this seems like a bit of BS, and it seems like this is something that readers do to drum up more money and more business. Um, it's kind of a classic maneuver in marketing, right? And still, like, I feel like with insurance, I feel like I have a similar experience when I go to buy car insurance, and they're like, oh, for just an extra $20, we'll put this extra insurance policy on your car. So, if something happens, so I feel like that's a kind of this classic thing, kind of instill fear and uncertainty in someone, or create a problem that wasn't there before, and then offer a solution for it. So I would be suspicious, or I would be wary of anyone that tries to do that. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, David. Yeah, and Ines, said the questions, or the answers from the tarot come from the higher consciousness, which is one, and we are all connected to it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It comes from the higher consciousness. I like that answer. Okay, so Flora, you said that you agree that readers do this for marketing purposes, but unfortunately, there are actually people who pay others to do black magic, and in my country, in Greece, this is very common. So one thing for people that are watching that are worried about this kind of stuff, um, it's really powerful to shield yourself energetically. And so because I've had people ask me, like, if I read tarot, am I attracting negative entities, things like that. And so one way to kind of give yourself peace of mind is to do a shielding meditation. Um, there's a few really good ones on YouTube. If you type in 12-dimensional shielding meditation, there's a few really good ones. But I do a meditation for shielding where I imagine, like, building up a pillar of light, protective light around me, and I've just kind of developed my own. It's kind of an amalgamation of other people's meditations, and I've just kind of adapted it to make it, you know, my own. But yeah, you can find all kinds of really good ones on, like, YouTube and stuff like that. How would you explain what the higher consciousness is? I'm thinking of religious friends who might question this since they believe in an all powerful God. I don't know how to explain what higher consciousness is. I mean, I have kind of a concept in my head. I'm not sure how to put it into words. I feel like that's a huge question. I don't know. I don't know how to succinctly answer it here. Yeah, I think that's a good question to ponder, though. How would we explain what higher consciousness is exactly? Yeah, God is pretty much the higher consciousness. Okay. Um, okay, so I'm going to take a couple more questions, then I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just scrolling up to see if I. Is it okay to be crap when you make your first tarot videos and then get better and laugh at them later on? Yes, Nicholas. Of course, it's okay to be crappy. In fact, I have kept all my old videos on my YouTube channel. So if you go to when I first started my YouTube channel, which was like 2011, I believe, it's like 11 years ago, I have some really bad videos where I used a really shitty camera, and those reading videos are terrible, but I've left them up there for your own amusement, so you can check them out. I like to think that I've improved, though. Okay, so Makita, you said, I ask where answers come from because sometimes I try to explain tarot to friends who think it's evil, and they have asked me, well, where do the answers come from? This is interesting because I had a conversation with a very religious guy many years ago, and he said that he felt that tarot was bad because it was Satan speaking through the cards. Um, so so that's why you're asking, where do the answers come from? I like to think I like to think that the answers come from when I do a reading for myself, or even when I'm reading for someone else. I feel like the answers come from my higher self, which is connected to the higher consciousness. So, yeah, and I don't know how you would explain that to someone in a way that would make them feel comfortable with tarot if they didn't feel comfortable with tarot in the beginning. Um, but I feel like in many ways we're tapping into our own collective unconscious, our own imagination, our own ideas when we're doing a tarot reading. Um, so I don't see it as like connecting with other entities outside of ourselves. Yeah, that's just my take on it. You know, in all the readings I've done, that's my take on where the answers come from. Sherry says, "Please give those sweet foster kitties a big hug for me." Yeah, I've got I just have one foster kitty right now. Her name's Rhea, and I'd show her to you, but she's taking a dump in her litter box right now. So I'll spare you the details. But she's doing really good. Okay, so I'll do one or two more questions. Do you take jumper cards when shuffling? Yes, Laura, I do. If I'm shuffling and a card flies out of the deck, I always would include that card in the reading. Unless like a ton of cards fly out, then I think it's just me being clumsy. I wouldn't necessarily read into it. But if one or two cards came flying out when I was shuffling, it doesn't happen that often. So when it does, I take it seriously and I always include those cards in the reading. Okay, I think I've answered everyone's question. If I missed your question, you can just pop it in the chat if you're still here, and I'll answer it because I think I've answered everything. Yeah. Any more of the chats with other tarot people coming up? I enjoyed the previous ones. Oh yeah, I did an interview series over the summer where I chatted with tarot people. I do plan on doing more interviews. I don't have any in the works at the moment, but I do plan on having more chats with more tarot people for sure. And if there's someone that you want me to interview, if there's a tarot person that really interests you, shoot me a message. Let me know. Okay, Makita says, speaking of this protective meditation you mentioned, do you do anything like that when closing a reading? Something to close the channel? Yes, so I do. So when I'm closing a reading, once the reading is over, I gather up the cards, I hold the deck, I say thank you, and then I mentally sort of imagine sort of releasing the person that I'm reading for, just so I'm not energetically still kind of hooked into them when I'm reading for them. And hey babe. Thanks so much. Thank you. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, guys. It was just my husband came in. He brought me some coffee. I knew he probably wouldn't want to be on video, so covered my camera. Yeah, so that's what I do when I'm finished a reading is I imagine just sort of releasing that person and kind of closing my channel. Yeah. Jacqueline says, can I ask a question? You sure can, Jacqueline. I'll take one more question and then I'm going to close it up. Do you stream every week? I don't. I streamed last week. I streamed this week. I'm planning on streaming hopefully once a month. I was thinking of doing like one card reading kind of thing, parties once a month. because I really enjoy doing those. And I always set the intention to do it, and then I forget. Time goes by and I forget. So I think this year I'm gonna really make a concerted effort to do more live more live casts. Do you feel physically tired after readings? Sometimes I do. It depends on a lot of things. It's funny. Sometimes I'll do a reading and I'll feel so energized afterwards. Um, and then other days I'll do a reading and I'm like, oh God, I'm so tired. I don't want to do any more readings for the rest of the day. And so I think it's a combination of, it might be who I'm reading for, it might be the topic, the questions they've asked, it might be me, it might just be what's going on, planetary alignment or whatever, energetically. It might be what's going on in my own body with vitamins and minerals and hormones and whatnot. So I find that, yeah, sometimes I do find reading exhausting and other times I find it energizing. Like if I do a reading party where I'm reading for like a ton of people in a short amount of time, I find I am just buzzing after. Like I won't be able to sleep that night. There's something simultaneously exhausting and energizing about it. Okay. I think everyone's asked all their questions. Yes, and Marcos, you're going to ask all your questions during my course. Yes, I'm looking forward to having you in my class, Marcos. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I think I answered everyone's questions. So, well done, you guys. These were great questions. So thank you so much for showing up here and hanging out with me and asking your questions. It's been an absolute honor to chat tarot with you, and yeah. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you guys in my class again. I'm really plugging my course here. I'm just gonna put it in the chat again if you're interested, because I'm gonna shut down registration pretty quickly. So I hope I see some of you guys in my upcoming class. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.